Hello, Lindsey. Welcome to Power Women Wellness. I'm excited to have you.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. And before we get started, I want you to share about yourself, what you do, but also just your little journey that you're on right now, because I think that's most likely going to change or impact some routines and stuff that you do since you're on the road. So feel free to share that too. I want to hear more about it.
Yes. Well, I know, a lot of your listeners are women who are looking for like growth and expansion in their lives. And so I'm certainly on that journey with you. And I own a business. So my business is Vital Side. I coach people with chronic stress and chronic symptoms. And I use techniques that I have learned through my training. So my background's in medicine. I worked as a physician associate in internal medicine. And I've also studied a lot of additional techniques. So neuro-linguistic programming, thought field therapy. And I basically created these programs for people who are really stuck in that stress cycle. Either they're dealing with burnout or they are people who have a chronic illness. So they have, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease, mast cell activation syndrome. So a lot of these kind of more chronic conditions. And that really started for me when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And so I was working as a travel PA and I was bitten by a tick and diagnosed with Lyme disease. And so at the time, I really only had my Western medical model brain that helped me through kind of figuring out what the next step for me was in my healing journey. But I quickly was hit with so many parameters around Western medicine, and I just didn't know where to go from there. It was like, the antibiotic wasn't doing it for me. The antiparasitic wasn't helping me to feel better. And I had daily fatigue and headaches and pain and all of these things. So that's where I started to kind of expand my toolbox. And I learned about the brain's ability to change, or neuroplasticity, how we can get stuck in a stress cycle. And I learned to break that cycle again and again, which was really what brought me to a full recovery. So I've been doing this, I've had Vital Side now for over 5 years. I've got 2,400 people in my private community. And right now I run my business and, I've got a team of people that work for me, and I do it all on the road. So I am living out of my Airstream this year and traveling with my big giant dog who's like 100 pounds and my husband. And we're kind of living on the road and traveling across America, really going to state to national parks and spending a lot of time outside in nature. And so it's been cool.
Nice.
It's been interesting. Yeah, breaking up the process of running a business, by being on the road. And it's certainly been has its ups and downs, but it has been so fun. I'm 4.5 months in at this point. So
I love that.
That's kind of me.
Yeah, I bet your parasympathetic nervous system is very chill, just being in all that nature all the time. I love it.
It's a combination. It's like when you are living on the road, you are much more immersed in life. So you're not thinking about like bigger picture stuff, or like, oh, was that bill sent here? Or, my health insurance, whatever it is, you're like, do we have food for tonight? And I know that you think about that at home as well, but it's much more like, because everything we have is with us, because our home is on wheels, because we have to make sure we get to the right place in the right time. So it's combination. And I always think, like, in my work, yes, it's great to be parasympathetic dominant, being in that rest and digest state more often than not, but that's not a reality. Like, what I teach people to do is to like move dynamically through their lives. So when they're in the sympathetic state, like we are when our back window busts while we're driving and we've, it's about to rain and we've got to like figure out a makeshift window, I can be in that sympathetic state and then move dynamically out of it so that I can kind of move through my life in an effective way. And I think that gets confused with coaches in this line of work, because it's like, oh, parasympathetic, let's like connect with joy and peace and stuff like that
all the time.
That's like great if you like are on a permanent vacation and you have no responsibility, but it is not it's not doable. And so no, it's not reality. So you have to learn to live dynamically in your life so that when you get to that place of, like, I think of it like a pendulum, and you swing into sympathetic and then over to the left, and then you swing into parasympathetic over to the right. So it's really about being able to move through these different states of being in an effective way. And living on the road is just like a snapshot into doing that. And it really tests your ability to do that.
I bet. And I know too, with being, well, I guess you found like your new routines, but I'd be curious to hear, because we'll be talking about like your routines and just how, how you're, taking care of yourself throughout the day, but still, maintaining an awesome business that's really successful and just like balancing it all. But how do you feel like your routines have changed from like, being here in Austin, being in a house to now on the road? Has anything massively changed, or have you been able to just stick with most of it regardless?
Absolutely everything has changed in a really good way though, y'all, because honestly, and I think this is good to hear, when you're a business owner, or maybe you have like a powerful social media presence or something like that, people tend to think you've got it all together. Like you found the secret, what you're doing. But the fact is, we're all humans and we all get stuck in ruts and patterns and routines just so easily. So prior to taking this trip, like say early, January 2023, I felt like I was in that rut. And I've told you, Lahana, like, I felt I was working 9 to 5 and just kind of grinding, because you can get stuck doing anything, even if you love it, even if you're so passionate about it, and you're like so excited about it, you can still get stuck in a rut because we're prone to just creating routines and doing the same thing in the same way again and again. So I needed that pattern breaker because I was feeling like I needed a change. And the way that I knew that was just feeling exhausted at the end of the day, like, like kind of letting your breath out and being like, oh my gosh, okay, now I've got to like watch TV in order to tune out because my brain is so overworked. And that is like the first sign of leading to burnout. And every single person experiences this. I think the levels of awareness just vary. So when I started to live on the road, everything changed. We've gone through so many different time zone changes, my schedule and my team. Like I've got 4 people in 4 different time zones. It's like, okay, this is 1 p.m. CT. So that is like, okay, what time is that? Mountain time and Pacific time, and so we're constantly doing stuff like that. But it's a great way to change your pattern. So now I still do the things that I've always done, just in a different way. So the first thing in the morning, like before I get out of bed, I meditate every single day. Not on the weekends always, just because I like to be spontaneous. That's part of my human design, is like needing that spontaneity. But on the weekdays, I meditate. So it just depends when I wake up, but I actually, like, my meditation teacher, like, she sends me a meditation every day. So it's a different one every day. They're very similar, but they have kind of the same themes. And so, like, this morning I woke up at 6:20. Sometimes I wake up at 7:15. It all just like varies. So
Yeah.
I don't set my alarm clock unless I have to be someplace really early, which is very rare. But I don't set an alarm. I wake up and I meditate in bed, which is the best way to make sure that I get my meditation in. And so this morning I meditated for 40 minutes. Sometimes it's 6 minutes, sometimes it's 9 minutes, but it doesn't matter the length.
Yeah.
All that matters is that I'm doing it. So that's
Love that.
something, that's something that I'm actually more regular at doing on the road, which is
It's
incredible.
interesting. Oh, I love that. Do you feel like it's because you're in a new place and like you're getting like just a new inspiration?
Well, habits are naturally easier to break when you're not doing the same thing in the same way every day. But like the thing about habits is now being on the road for 4.5 months, living in an Airstream, I can get stuck in that habit again. But I think the reason why I do it now is because everything changes so much. I need to do the things that make me really align and connect with my inner self. And they're way more important to me because when I'm at home, it's like, oh, I know who I am, right? I'm the person that looks in the mirror in the morning, and I'm the person that like looks outside and like maybe, like listens to this podcast first thing in the morning. Like I have all these things, like signs, like very tangible physical signs around me that make up who I am. And we all know that is a facade in general anyway, because houses burn down. We're not who our surroundings are. And so living on the road, it like you wear your emotions on your sleeve. You can't hide anything. Like there's obviously you can get alone time and stuff if needed, but you really can't hide from yourself. Like my go-to is going into my room and like watching a familiar TV show and just zoning out. And that was like my go-to at home. Well, I don't really have the option to do that here. I do have a bedroom and stuff, but like I've got things that we have to do in order to get to where we're going. So yeah, of course, occasionally I can check out, but checking out happens when you are so mentally exhausted and you're stuck in that stress cycle that the brain's protective mechanism is to check out. And now I don't need to as much because I have these routines that I stick to that help me to stay regulated throughout the day. I have hefty breaks throughout the day. I have more nature time. I have, more time doing self-care things. So it's an interesting thing. And it's been a really interesting experience because I've always loved to travel, but traveling on the road is a little bit different. And so meditation, that in bed in particular, best thing I do. And then I always move my body. So after meditation, I get up, I either take my dog for a walk or I go outside, I do yoga. I have like weights, yoga mat, all the stuff with me. It's been hard though, because I injured my back. I injured my back about like a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I just like strained my trap, and being on the road is very physical. So we're always lifting stuff, we're always doing stuff. And then movement had to change for me. And that was, an issue for someone who really likes to move and who's a very physical person. So it was tough, but my other habits like meditation, like alone time, like the other self-care stuff that I have were the things that got me through. And now I'm able to move, not as much as I was doing before. Like I'm not lifting weights yet, but now I'm able to go on long walks and things like that. But it's one of those things where always have to adapt and pivot in life. On the road, you're pretty much doing it every day. So
It's changing.
you better learn or you're going to be mad. You're just going to be mad the whole time.
How often are you guys moving a location? Once a month, every couple weeks, every day?
So we're doing it quite a lot. Like everyone's different when they do this kind of stuff, but we wanted to take the year and just go, you know, to all the coolest places. And really we're traveling about every 4 to 5 days. So that's on
Wow.
average, which is kind of a lot. We were just in Tucson last week. We spent 7 days there. That was the longest time we'd spent anywhere. And we're like, oh, this is a long time. We know everything about Tucson.
When you come
But
home
the
and you're done next year, how are you gonna feel?
I know I'm already preparing for that. I'm like 2 steps ahead of you. I'm like, okay, I'm talking to my other friends who've done this. I'm like, how do you like wind down for this? But
Yeah.
I have to prepare for it in advance, but it's and what we want to eventually do is be able to stay for places for longer periods of time, the places that we really, really like. But the cool thing about traveling as much as we are, like every 4 to 5 days, is we only travel like 2 hours or 3 hours. So
Yeah.
sometimes we'll travel like 2 hours, then we'll stay for a place for like 2 days or something like that. And then we'll go another 2 hours to really get to the park that we want to go to. But breaking up driving like that is a game changer. If you're one of those people who are like, oh, I don't like road trips, break it up into 2 hour stints. You'll be like, am I even on the road? Like, how did I get here so fast? Like, this is crazy. So I've loved doing that. And in part that is out of necessity because I'm working full time and I'm
Yeah.
seeing clients and I'm taking meetings and stuff like that. And so that is something where, you know, my husband knows the days that I see clients and take meetings, and those are factored into their schedule. So it's really, it all supports one another, right? We're not
Love
just
that.
like traveling willy-nilly. We have like
Yeah.
a 60-page itinerary of where we're
I love
going,
that.
you know, what's happening. Of course, like things, I know you would love that. Of course you would love that. I'm like,
Yes.
that's so my husband. He's so detail oriented, and I'm like very big picture, and I'm like, where are we going now?
He's got you. He's like, I know where we're going next. How is that changed with has it changed anything with eating? I mean, I'm sure again with that detailed itinerary, you guys probably know like, hey, we're going into this city, it's big, we'll stock up on groceries. And if you're going probably to the next place and it's not maybe doesn't have a ton of groceries, I'm sure you guys are prepared in that way. But has anything major changed in nourishing yourself or gotten better, worse, same?
Yeah, at first it had gotten worse. And like so the first leg of the trip, we were in the southeast. So we went
Oh.
south of
Don't need to
Austin.
say more. Just kidding.
So yeah, right. South of Austin. Then we just went south and then just east. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it is few
There's
and
not a
far
lot out there.
between the type of shops you can go to. It's like Dollar Tree
Yeah.
and Subway, Dollar Tree and Subway, Dollar Tree and
Yes.
Subway.
With Starbucks, unless you're in Mississippi and there's no Starbucks on the main highway.
I was gonna say, like, Starbucks is also few and far between. If you see a Starbucks, you can count yourself lucky because you're like, you know, and again, we went very rural, so that is something to consider. But what we did, so the first leg of the trip, probably the first 4 weeks, we didn't eat as well as we typically do. Now I don't have rigidity around what I eat. I eat everything, but I kind of, my whole thing is like sticking to whole foods, you know, less processed stuff, organic when possible, and like grass fed. But I eat like meats, I eat a variety of things. And so we would stock up in a grocery store. Like if we Whole Foods, like we would stock up at Whole Foods and just kind of be like, okay, hopefully this will last us like about a month, aside from like fresh fruits and vegetables. And then if we had to go to the Dollar Tree, we would get fruits and vegetables there, and then we'd store some meats in the freezer, and stuff like that, snacks we'd be able to keep. And so we're in Sedona right now, and my husband right now is at Natural Grocers, and I'm so excited because we haven't been to one of those
Yes.
in a couple of months. We're like, that's like our spot. So we stock up, but honestly, like after that hurdle of the first month or so, then we started to go to farmers markets. We started to really get now we don't do any like fast food. Like, of course, like we did a couple Chick-fil-A at the beginning, and now we don't really do fast food. Like what we've done is found things that you can easily heat up. So we some like burritos, like fresh burritos from Trader Joe's, and we froze them. And so we heat them up. We got like fresh tamales from Mexico, have them in the freezer, can heat them up. We do also a lot of pickled food, sauerkraut, kimchi, anything pickled, we're obsessed with. So that stays good. So you can put that in the fridge. And then when we come back from maybe a couple hours of traveling, we're eating like, a late lunch, you just spoon out all of the pickled food, maybe make like a makeshift charcuterie, have some meats and stuff. It's an amazing like lunch. And so now I think we're actually eating better than we have. We're not drinking alcohol, it's just now we're kind of feeling more clean in the things that we're doing and the habits that we have. So I think
that.
Adding a challenge can actually be a good thing, because then you're like, oh, now I appreciate those foods so much more, and I like crave it, and I'm excited about eating it. So it's been a journey, and I really like where we're at now.
I love that you like also learned, like you had a little trouble, like not trouble, but just like a hurdle to overcome in the beginning. And now like you guys got it down. We are like the generation that grew up on Lunchables. And I feel like that shows in our love for charcuterie boards. I think it's just a fancy Lunchable. I remember when I heard that, I'm like, that's so true. That's why we like charcuterie boards. Because they're Lunchables.
Yeah. I've never thought about that. That's really true. I love that. I love like a packaged thing. My mom fed me so well when I was a kid, and I have to like give her kudos for that. She had some tricks up her sleeve for me. But one of the things was like, I only got a Lunchable if we were going on a field trip. And so I got it maybe like 5 times. But I was like so excited about it when I got it, and I loved everything packaged and stuff like that. But it was a novelty. And the same goes for like McDonald's. Like we didn't eat it regularly, but when we did, we were just excited about it. So she didn't have rigidity around food. And then one of her major things that she did for us, like major tips, was before we ate dinner, she just put out tons of veggies with dip, and she would just like put them there. And we would be hungry because we haven't eaten dinner yet. So we would just eat tons of veggies. And then we would eat dinner afterwards. And so we wouldn't be super, like we wouldn't be like overly hungry or anything like that. And we would just kind of eat our dinner. So as a result, like I don't have rigidity around food. I'm not like, I think the only time was in college when I was like, oh my gosh, I can eat Lucky Charms. This is crazy. But
that was me when I first started driving.
Oh yeah, you were driving to all the places.
Yeah, like I could totally go to McDonald's because I can drive there. I don't have to depend on my parents anymore. So yeah, I remember having that like that weird freedom of like, I could do whatever I wanted.
Now I'm like, I'm so thankful for Natural Grocers. And why isn't there a fast food place that offers good food? Answer me that, Lahana, because I'm thinking of creating one.
Yes.
Like, this needs to happen. I've had this idea in my mind since after PA school, and I'm just like, I was driving a lot because I was a travel PA, and so I was like driving across the country by myself, and I'm like, I know what to get at McDonald's, like healthiest thing to get at
Yeah.
McDonald's, but why can't I go to, why isn't there the equivalent of a like, health food type fast food
Yeah.
store? I
I
don't know.
know. I don't know. I mean, of course, there's things like kava, so like fast, casual food. But I mean, I don't know if it's like a budget thing or a money thing where you can have all these different locations. Cause I feel like that's what makes fast food like fast food. They're everywhere. You can find them easily. And I think the food is just so cheap. I honestly have no idea, but I've always wondered why no one has created something like that, because every time we're on a road trip, that crosses my mind every single time. And you do the best you can. Like I actually love the Chick-fil-A salads. But their dressing's crap. So it's just like, it sucks. You do the best you can, but I always wonder why that's not out there. So y'all are power women. So come on. Who's going to make this happen?
Yeah, we'll be investors. Like we want in, like we need to figure this out. But I think it is people don't really want to eat that. Like if you had the opportunity to eat, maybe a lot of us listening, Chick-fil-A versus like, a really amazing bowl, we probably would. Are there enough people that want to do that yet? Probably not. So
Yeah.
I think the more we talk about this stuff, and I think the further we get into like 2024 and 2025, like people, this will change. I see it changing. So
I agree.
it's coming.
You're even seeing like young women in their early 20s, like questioning, like birth control and what they're putting in their bodies. So I never even thought about that when I was that age. So it obviously is changing and it's hitting younger generations. And I feel like if that keeps continuing, there will be a huge demand at one point, and there has to be. And then we're going to like live in that decade and we'll be like, how did we ever do it without these?
Yeah,
It's so true.
that's the dream.
So I love that you're balancing it all with just like, working, but traveling and just doing that. Do you have any other tools that you've utilized on your trips to keep you balanced or to further you as an entrepreneur, books, podcasts, any resources that you have really loved, even just in your entrepreneurial journey in general?
Yeah, I think, well, as far as books, podcasts, stuff like that, I'm very inclined to go through phases with things. And so I'm a big reader. I love to read nonfiction, fiction, all the things. Then I get really inundated and I'm like reading 6 books at once. And
Guilty.
so, yeah, right. Because you have so many interests. You're like, oh, this sounds cool. And what about this? But on the road again, you have to simplify because you can't just have books all around. And yeah, I have a Kindle, but like there's something about the need for simplicity. And I find myself coming back to that all the time. Is just like, how can I simplify things? So books go right now. I'm reading fiction. I kind of stopped doing. Are you okay? Yeah, I stopped doing nonfiction, even though I love reading nonfiction, especially these last couple months, because I did a lot of research for a new program that's coming out in June, and I needed a change. So after work, like the reading, I was like, I want to read, but I can't do nonfiction. So I'm reading.
I'm with you.
Fiction.
I'm with you. I mean, my nonfiction is being in school in my doctorate program. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where that is. So yeah, I am like done with that information when I'm in school. And so any like elective reading is always something fun, spicy, romance. Like that's my jam.
I think it's great to go through phases, and I think it's okay to allow yourself to just change and adapt to where you are. I think that's great. And podcasts that I listen to on the road, again, not super delved into that podcast world, mainly because I'm probably, doing research for my own podcasts and stuff like that. One that I tend to come back to is Optimal Living Daily, where the host, he just reads blog posts that people post having to do with wellness, and they're very short, like Yeah, some are like 5 minutes long. I started to listen to him like 7 years ago. This podcast has been going on forever. I think he has a new one every single day. His voice is just so soothing, and it
Oh,
gives you a little
love that.
tidbit into information, rather than, sometimes I'll listen to like a interview for 2 hours and it's like, okay, that's a lot. So
It's a
having
lot.
like a tidbit of a tidbit of information can be so helpful. So Optimal Living Daily is a great one. And he reads other people's work. So it's not him doing all
I
the
love
stuff all the
that.
time. It's reading other wellness bloggers and professionals and stuff like that. So that's kind of focused there. And then it for me, it's all about boundaries and getting alone time. Um,
Yeah.
I tend to be a hermit in general, which is funny because, my friends are like, really, you're a hermit? But because I have friends that I love and that we have things in common with, it's really easy to interact. And it is easy for me to interact in general, but I don't get my energy that way. So
Mm,
I need to balance socialization with alone time. And so
yeah.
really getting daily that time alone and like setting boundaries. um I can't do, I
Yeah.
can't meet you. No, I can't talk on the
Yeah.
phone right now. I have to say no, right? Really, it is that power of saying no. And my socialization has changed a lot now that I'm on the road, but I'm meeting new people and doing new things. And so my husband is a bit more extroverted than I am. So if he's going out doing something with some new friends, it's like I have to give myself that uh pose myself that question. Do I want to do this? Is this something that I
Yeah.
have the energy to do, or can I just stay here and lie in the sun and do some watercolor painting, which I started doing? I got this like little tiny notebook and I just watercolor and be creative in my own way. And so giving myself that space to set boundaries and putting my phone away,
Mm,
disconnecting from technology, even if it's just for an hour, and being able to be creative in my own way has been extremely helpful. Because you'd think I'm on the road and I'm like spending a lot of time in nature and, hiking, and I am doing that stuff, but I'm also running a business. So I'm slacking throughout the day, like at brunch, and I,
yeah.
have to get home for a client call and all these things, preparing for a group session, preparing for lunch. And I need to give myself those
Mm,
breaks. So even if it's an hour a day or half a day on the weekend or something like that, just being really super intentional about my own boundaries has been super helpful.
agreed. I think we've gotten away from like some of the stuff we did as kids. And I think that was really vital for us. Like you mentioned, like watercoloring, coloring, just, giving us that break to have fun. And as adults, we're always just so go, go, go all the time. Everyone's kind of guilty of it at some point. And so I love that you're kind of bringing that back, that innocent, just fun, creative play. I think we all need. But I love that you're putting it as a priority. Going back to books too, what's your latest like favorite fiction book that you've read so lately?
Well, my favorite author is Leanne Moriarty. She's an
Okay.
Australian author, and her last book, I think it was published maybe 2 years ago. I read it last year, called Apples Don't Fall Far. I really like her writing because I like a mystery, but not a scary or gory mystery. And
Okay.
I like to do things in general. Like, I don't watch scary movies. I don't like to
Mm,
intentionally like scare myself in for a long period of time. Like, I love
yes.
a good like thrill, like a ride or something like that, but I don't want to come back to a series of things that continually scare me and like cause me to have adrenaline and cortisol like before I go to bed, which is typically when I read.
I don't
So
know how people who do like the crime stuff, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it.
I know. I was guilty of listening to the Dateline podcast while we were doing some long drives last year. And we made a pact this time around. We're like, we're not listening to that, because even though once or twice, then it's fine. And then all of a sudden you have this nightmare and you're like, okay, I have to be aware that the stuff I'm consuming impacts my subconscious mind. So let's pause that. Leanne Moriarty, she has these books that have a story that are about a mystery, but it's usually like a family dynamic, and it's usually like a fun, interesting mystery, but it leaves you on the edge of your seat. A lot of it takes place in Australia. So like my business partner lives there. I love just the visual that's created and the way that she writes, and it's a lot of family dynamic. Like Three Wishes is another one of hers. I've read all her books, and I absolutely, I'm waiting for her to publish another one. So she's definitely my favorite. I
love that
author. Yeah, and I've been reading. So yeah, I just finished a book yesterday. I read all the time, so but she's the one that sticks out to me the most, that I'm like, give any of her books a go. You know, she's a really great one if you kind of like to come back to that kind of little bit of a fun mystery nightly. It's a great
Have you read Verity by Colleen Hoover?
No.
Oh, you'll have to give that one a read. Colleen usually has like just romance books, which is my jam. And this has some romance in it, but oh my gosh, what a crazy ride. I literally read all day. I will not put it down until I knew the end. And even at the end, I was just like, what is happening? What is going on? So you have to read it. It's so good. And there's some heavy parts. Usually I don't like you said, like I don't intentionally like watch scary movies or anything, because I don't like inviting that stuff into my brain or into my life. But not that that's a horror book, but man, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I like kind of hearing you talk a little bit about this author. I'm like, ooh, you might like Verity. Every person I know that has read it has loved it. So if you read it, let me know what your thoughts are.
Oh, I definitely will. I'm so excited. I literally finished a book last night, and I was like, okay, waiting. I have a couple people that we share book recommendations, and I'm like waiting, twiddling my thumbs. So that'll be my next read.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I love reading too. It's definitely that thing as a child that I loved to help just like creative. I love just envisioning. I love movies too, but I love the option of envisioning how I want to envision, a character or whatever. And I just got back to it probably a couple years ago. But I don't know. I think just the business of an adult, or even like being a mom, like, oh, I don't have time to read, but I just made time, and it's just been the best thing. And also just a time to get off the screen. So again, I love movies, I love shows, but I'm always looking at a screen. So I'm like, what can I do that's not looking at a screen? So I'll buy literal physical books so I don't have to look at a screen.
Right. It evokes creativity. So for those of us who are creative, like for me and my human design, like I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm constantly churning out ideas. Like I constantly have a notepad. I'm like writing things down, looking into new projects, looking into new things. I'm sure you're something along the lines of that too, where you're just like always doing stuff. And so, and as a result, or maybe just being a creative person in general allows me to create constantly. But even when I'm winding down, I want to create. So we were talking about this today at breakfast, because my husband's dyslexic, and so he listens to Audible books, but he only listens to nonfiction. And he's creative in very different ways than I am. But I said one of my favorite things about reading fiction is the characters that you create. So you're putting your brain to work, but not in a way that is going to impact your income or change the way like you're running your business or something like that. You're putting your creativity to use in a way that is fluid and playful. So it's going back to play. As a kid, that's constantly what we're doing, right? We're creating new worlds, or we're like playing house, or we're playing with dolls or stuffed animals or something like that, giving them stories. So this is a way to generate that similar creativity and use those parts of your brain that allow you to be creative, but in a way that's not going to be impactful on your life. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why like I love reading, or doing art that's just kind of fun, or doing puzzles, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff I think is really important to do as an adult. And especially for those people who say like, maybe I don't have time, it takes prioritizing 10 minutes a day. So just sitting down and doing something for as little as 10 minutes, that can be enough to create a habit. So then you become the reader, right? Maybe 3
Yeah.
years ago, you wouldn't describe yourself like that, but now you've embodied reader. And so that's just what you do. And the people around you know you do that, and you prioritize it. So that's when routines become habits.
Yeah. Well, I love you sharing your journey, just like being on the road and just all your insight on that. I'd love for you to share, where can people find you, where they can find your programs, because it is something that we often are always referring patients to be like, you need to get something, especially like you said, as they're dealing with chronic illness, you need to get this part of your health in check and being worked on. So share with us, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at my vital side, VITAL, side SIDE. And you can find me on my website too, which I'm sure will be linked somewhere here. But I have a new program coming out called Reboot, which will be launched June 30th. And this is a program to break the stress cycle for those busy people. So for
Mm.
parents, for business owners, for people who are maybe on the verge of burnout, like I was prior to this trip, you kind of feel like you're stuck in this hamster wheel of life and you're moving through your life, but you're not really focused on it or feeling aligned or connected to it. So this is a new program coming out June 30th. So I'll send you a wait list so you can share that with your listeners. And for those people who more so have chronic symptoms and chronic illness, so dizziness, pain, inflammation, fatigue, that's typically when I recommend my other program, Rewire. So that's designed for the person who is really in that sympathetic dominant state, dealing with survival responses day in and out in the form of physical symptoms. So 2 different programs going on, but all of that information can be found on my Instagram or my website, which is vital-side.com.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I loved it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.